Poor caregiver helped forgotten elderly woman, didn't know her son was a millionaire CEO. An emotional story by Heartfelt Tales. Maria's hands trembled as she counted the crumpled bills one more time, $37.43. Not enough for her daughter's medication, not enough for next week's groceries, and definitely not enough to fix the broken heater that left their tiny apartment feeling like an icebox. She closed her eyes and whispered a prayer, the same one she'd been repeating for months. Please, just help me get through one more day. What Maria didn't know was that in just a few hours, her life would change forever, not because of a lottery ticket or a miracle windfall, but because of something far more precious, the kind of love that asks for nothing in return. The morning started like any other. Maria pulled on her worn scrubs, kissed her sleeping 8-year-old daughter Sophia goodbye, and walked the 6 blocks to Sunset Manor, the assisted living facility where she worked as a caregiver. The pay was barely above minimum wage, but it was honest work, and more importantly, it was work that filled her heart even when her wallet stayed empty. "Good morning, Mrs. Chen," Maria called softly as she entered room 247. Eleanor Chen, 84 years old, sat by the window in her wheelchair, staring out at the parking lot with vacant eyes that had long since stopped recognizing the world around her. Alzheimer's had stolen most of her memories, leaving behind only fragments of the brilliant woman she once was. Eleanor had no visitors. No family members stopped by during holidays. Her room was sparse, containing only the basic furniture provided by the facility and a single photograph on the nightstand, a young man in a graduation cap and gown, smiling broadly as he held his diploma. The photo was faded and worn from Eleanor's constant touching in her more lucid moments. "Let's get you ready for breakfast, sweetheart," Maria said, her voice warm and gentle. She had learned that Eleanor responded better to tenderness than efficiency. While other caregivers rushed through their duties, Maria took time to braid Eleanor's silver hair, to hum soft melodies while helping her dress, to treat her with the dignity that every human being deserved. As weeks turned into months, Maria found herself staying later each day, long past her shift, just to sit with Eleanor. She would read to her from romance novels she borrowed from the library, paint her nails a soft pink, or simply hold her hand while Eleanor stared out the window. The facility's management noticed but said nothing. Maria's dedication to the residents was extraordinary, even if it meant paying overtime they couldn't really afford. One particularly difficult evening, Sophia came down with a high fever. Maria had used her last sick day the month before when her daughter had strep throat, and she couldn't afford to miss work. With no one else to watch Sophia, Maria made the heartbreaking decision that had haunted her for months. She brought her daughter to work. "Mama, why is the lady so sad?" Sophia whispered as she watched Eleanor sitting by the window. Maria had settled her daughter in a corner chair with coloring books and crackers, hoping her supervisor wouldn't notice. "She's not sad, Mija. She's just lost inside her own mind. Sometimes people forget things when they get older, and it makes them confused." Sophia, with the innocent wisdom that only children possess, walked over to Eleanor and gently placed a drawing in her lap, a colorful picture of 2 figures holding hands under a rainbow. "This is for you, abuela," she said, using the Spanish word for grandmother that Maria had taught her. Something miraculous happened. Eleanor looked down at the drawing, then up at Sophia, and for the first time in months, she smiled. Her eyes, usually cloudy and distant, seemed to focus. She reached out with a shaky hand and touched Sophia's cheek. "Such a beautiful child," Eleanor whispered, her voice barely audible. "She looks just like. The moment of clarity faded, but the smile remained. From that day forward, whenever Maria had no choice but to bring Sophia to work, Eleanor would light up. The little girl would sit beside the elderly woman, chattering about school, about her dreams of becoming a doctor, about the books her mama read to her. Eleanor might not understand the words, but she understood the love. The breaking point came on a cold Tuesday in December. Sophia had been fighting a persistent cough for weeks, and Maria knew it was more than just a cold. The school nurse had called twice, insisting that Sophia needed to see a doctor, but Maria had been putting it off because she couldn't afford the visit. Their insurance had lapsed when she had to reduce her hours to care for Sophia during a previous illness. That morning, Sophia woke up struggling to breathe. Panicked, Maria called 911, and they rushed to the emergency room. The diagnosis was pneumonia, and Sophia needed immediate treatment and medication that would cost over $800, money Maria simply didn't have. Sitting in the hospital hallway, Maria finally broke down. She called her supervisor at Sunset Manor, sobbing as she explained she couldn't come to work, that she might have to quit to take care of Sophia, that she didn't know what else to do. Back at Sunset Manor, Eleanor sat by her window as usual, but something was different. She kept looking toward the door, as if waiting for someone. When the evening shift caregiver came to help her with dinner, Eleanor grabbed her arm with surprising strength. "Where is she?" Eleanor demanded, more lucid than she'd been in years. "Where is the girl with the kind eyes? And the little one who draws rainbows?" The caregiver, startled by Eleanor's sudden clarity, explained that Maria had a family emergency. Eleanor's face crumpled with worry, and she began repeating over and over, "Find them. Find my girls." Meanwhile, across town, Maria sat beside Sophia's hospital bed, holding her daughter's small hand as she slept fitfully. The doctor had started treatment, but the bills were already piling up, and Maria knew she was drowning in debt she could never repay. Her phone buzzed with a text from her supervisor, "Take all the time you need. Your job will be waiting." It was a kindness Maria appreciated, but she knew the truth. Without her income, they would lose their apartment. Without insurance, they would never pay off these medical bills. She was 26 years old, and she felt like she was failing at everything that mattered. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. A tall man in an expensive suit walked into Sophia's hospital room, looking nervous and out of place. His eyes were kind but uncertain, and he carried an envelope in his hands. "Excuse me," he said softly. "Are you Maria Rodriguez?" Maria looked up, confused and a little frightened. "Yes, but I don't think we've met." The man took a deep breath. "My name is David Chen. I believe you've been taking care of my mother." The room seemed to spin around Maria. "Eleanor? Eleanor is your mother?" David nodded, his eyes filling with tears. "I've been looking for her for 3 years. She disappeared from her home one day, and we couldn't find her anywhere. We hired investigators, checked hospitals, put up missing person posters. I never thought to check assisted living facilities because she had never been diagnosed with dementia. I thought she was dead." The story poured out of him then. Eleanor had been a successful real estate agent, living independently in her own home. David, a CEO of a tech company, lived across the country and called regularly, but their relationship had been strained after his father's death. During one of their arguments about her refusing to move closer to him, Eleanor had apparently become confused and wandered away from her home. She was found 3 days later, disoriented and unable to remember her name or address. With no identification and no one to claim her, she had been placed in state care at Sunset Manor. The facility tried to find her family, but she had taken my father's name when they married, and I was listed in her emergency contacts under a nickname she used for me as a child. The investigators couldn't make the connection, David explained, his voice breaking. I never stopped looking for her, but I was searching for Eleanor Patterson, not Eleanor Chen. How did you find her now? Maria asked, still reeling from this revelation. Yesterday, she became very agitated when you didn't come to work. She was asking for her girls and kept saying your names over and over. One of the caregivers finally understood what she was saying and looked up your information. When they called to check on you, they mentioned Mrs. Chen was worried about her favorite caregiver, Maria, and her daughter Sophia. I have a Google alert set for my mother's name. The facility's social media post about their residents' concern for staff members included her name, and I saw it last night. David looked at Sophia sleeping peacefully, then back at Maria. The staff told me what you've done for my mother. How you've treated her with such love and kindness, even though you thought she had no family. They said you stay late, that you bring your daughter to visit her, that you've never treated her like just another patient. Tears were streaming down Maria's face now. She's such a sweet woman. Even with the dementia, there's so much love in her. I could see it. The nurses told me about your situation, David continued gently. About your daughter's illness, about the bills, about how you've been struggling. I want to help, but more than that, I want to do something for the person who gave my mother love when I couldn't find her to do it myself. He handed Maria the envelope. This is just the beginning. All of Sophia's medical expenses will be covered, and I've set up a trust fund for her education. But I have a bigger request. Maria opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a check for $50,000 and a job offer letter. I want to hire you as my mother's private caregiver, David said. Full salary, complete benefits, housing provided in a guest house on my property so you can bring Sophia. I'm moving my mother to a memory care facility near my home in California, the best one in the state. But I want you there with her, because you know how to love her in a way that I'm still learning. Maria couldn't speak through her tears. Sophia stirred in her hospital bed and opened her eyes, smiling when she saw her mother. Mama, you're crying happy tears, Sophia said with the wisdom that had always amazed Maria. Yes, Mija. Very happy tears. 6 months later, Maria stood in the Garden of Sunshine Memory Care, watching Eleanor and Sophia plant flowers together. The California facility was beautiful, with gardens and art rooms and staff who treated residents like family. Eleanor had good days and bad days, but she always brightened when Sophia bounded in from school each afternoon. David visited every week now, sometimes more. He had learned to sit patiently while his mother told the same stories over and over, to respond with love when she didn't recognize him, to find joy in the moments of clarity when she remembered being proud of her successful son. She's teaching me how to love without expecting anything in return, David told Maria one afternoon as they watched Eleanor help Sophia with her homework. You showed me that. For 3 years, I searched for her because I felt guilty about our relationship, because I wanted to make things right. But you loved her simply because she needed love. Maria smiled, watching her daughter explain a math problem to Eleanor with infinite patience. Love isn't complicated. It's just choosing to see someone's worth even when they can't see it themselves. The transformation in all their lives had been remarkable. Sophia was thriving in her new school, her medical needs fully cared for, her college fund growing. She had declared her intention to become a geriatrician, inspired by her friendship with Grandma Eleanor. Maria had completed a certification program to become a registered nurse, with David's company paying for her education. But perhaps the most beautiful change was in Eleanor herself. Surrounded by love and professional care, her moments of lucidity had increased. She might not remember David's name every day, but she remembered that he was important to her. She might not recall her past, but she was creating new memories filled with laughter and gentleness. One evening, as Maria was helping Eleanor get ready for bed, the older woman grasped her hand with surprising strength. I may not remember much, Eleanor said, her eyes clear and focused, but I remember kindness. I remember that when I was lost, you found me. Not my son with all his money and investigators, you with your gentle hands and patient heart. You found the person I still was inside. Maria squeezed her hand. You were never lost, Mrs. Chen. You were just waiting for the right people to see you. As Maria tucked Eleanor into bed and kissed Sophia goodnight in the room next door, she reflected on the journey that had brought them here. She had started with nothing but love to give, and somehow, that had been enough. More than enough. The last thing she saw before turning off the lights was that faded photograph on Eleanor's nightstand, David in his graduation cap and gown. But now it was surrounded by new pictures, Sophia's drawings, photos of garden parties and birthday celebrations, images of a family that had found each other through the simple act of caring. Sometimes the greatest gifts come not from what we have to give, but from our willingness to give what we have. And sometimes, when we open our hearts to love someone who seems to have nothing to offer in return, we discover that we've been given everything that truly matters: purpose, connection, and the profound joy that comes from making someone else's world a little brighter. Maria had learned that kindness is never wasted, love is never forgotten, and sometimes the smallest acts of compassion can change not just one life, but an entire family's destiny. In caring for Eleanor, she had found her own path to a future she never could have imagined, one built on the foundation of seeing dignity in every person and choosing love over convenience, every single day.